Hi everyone, this is a tip video to get you started with homework 4, which is probably the most difficult of our homework assignments, just because you're asked to create 3 functions that all kind of work together in this coordinated effort to calculate a student's grade and assign a letter grade. So I think I'll get you started with the first function, not the whole thing, but just like the layout of the function and kind of explain how this all works. And hopefully this you'll have less problems as you move forward with this assignment. Okay, so I'm looking at the instructions here, and we're basically asked to create 3 functions. All of them have behave in slightly different ways as far as what kind of arguments they will accept, and what they will do, and what values they will return. So let's just zero in on the first one, the calc average function. That's the one that you're going to do first. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these instructions here, where it says the function is called calc average. Okay, that's helpful. And it will accept 2 float arguments. That's significant. And it will also return a float. That is also significant. So let me paste these into my program here that I have going. Okay, I'm going to put the function declaration up here, and then I'll move to the bottom and define it down below. That's my preferred method. You can, if you want to put the whole block or the whole definition up here before main, that's fine too, but I like to do it with the declaration up here and then put all the larger definitions down below. Okay, so anyway, here we're told that the function is called calc average, and it will accept 2 float arguments. This is what's going to go in parentheses. Anytime you hear me talking about arguments or parentheses or anything like, arguments or parameters, anything like that, we're really talking about what goes in the parentheses. Main, for example, is a function. It accepts no arguments, and it has 0 parameters. Okay, that's another way of saying it accepts no arguments. And you see the parentheses are empty. So again, let me reiterate, when we're talking about arguments or parameters, you're thinking about those parentheses, okay? And then this is, it will return a float. And whenever you're reading or thinking about a return value for a function, this is what's going to go out in front. For example, main is a function. Main returns an integer, okay? And lo and behold, at the end of probably all of our programs in this class, we always type return 0. 0 is an integer. So let's declare this function. So we said the function returns a float. So I'm going to start with the word float. And so that's the return value. We were told to name the function calc average. Okay, and then very importantly, the function is supposed to accept 2 float arguments, basically representing the midterm and the final. So I'm going to create my parameters. They both have to be floats. We'll say float m, that'll represent the midterm coming through the door, and then float f will be the final. Okay? So now we have the function declaration. Now we're going to define the function. Like I said, I like to put the definition down below. So I like to copy it and then paste it down below, just so I don't make a mistake with the typing or mess something up. And then, of course, you do have to get rid of your semicolon there. That's only in the function declaration. All right, so I'm going to lay out a curly brace sandwich here. Okay, and all right, so we have the midterm and the final coming through the door here, and this function is supposed to average them together and spit out the value, so to speak, or return the value, and we'll return it back to main, which is where we're ultimately going to call this function from. But so, another thing, some students will read the instructions and say, okay, I'm supposed to take the midterm and the final and average them together, and then they'll start creating variables here, like for the midterm and final. No, you have them coming through the door. You have those values in the m and f variables. These are really just variables. Parameters are variables, variables that are private to the function and are used by the function. So really what this comes down to is us just creating an average variable, for example, a. Maybe I'll say A, I'll spell it out so it's clear. Float average equals, and then I'm going to average these together, or add these, and divide by 2, okay? That'll get me the student's average. Note, again, I used the parameter values. Once they're in the door, and you should use them, okay? Don't run into trouble by creating brand new, then it's not going to work. Okay, so then the last thing to do would be to return the average. Okay? All right, so that's the first function basically. And when you're going to call the function, and you'll have 2 other functions as well that you'll define using the same methods that I outlined here. And basically, okay, here we're getting the midterm and the final from the user, which I'm calling them MT and fin, all right? And then I also have an AVG variable up here that's going to hold the average when I get it. My function is going to calculate that average and spit it back to main, or return it to main. So I'm going to say AVG equals, and then call upon my function calcAverage. Okay, calcAverage accepts 2 arguments, so I've got to make sure I pass it 2 things. If everything doesn't match perfectly, you're going to get compiler errors. So the calcAverage is waiting for the midterm, which here in main we've called MT, and then fin, which is the final here in main, the final exam. Okay? So now I have the average. Okay? And the next step in this process is to take that average, whatever it is, 85%, 95%, whatever the student did numerically in the class, and then ultimately we're going to pass that to a function called letter grade, which accepts, not coincidentally, 1 float argument, that'll be the student's average, and it will return a character. It's going to return a character. Let me just write the declaration for this one, and I won't define it, but again, I just want to make sure. Let me get those instructions and put them up here. Again, let's translate this to code. This plain English is going to be translated to code. So it returns a char, or character, so that you know the return type always starts the function out at the beginning. Okay, so we are also told that the function will be called letter grade. Okay, and it accepts 1 float argument. Okay, so this one's slightly simpler than the calcAverage function. I guess this is going to be the average coming through the door, so why don't we just call it A for the function? That'll be our parameter name. Okay, so basically, once this is defined down below, we have the average. We are going to end up passing that to the letter grade function. Okay, which is going to be defined. It's not defined at the moment, but so here, up here I have this char data type, or char variable called letter, and ultimately I'm going to say letter equals letter grade. This is a call to my letter grade function. The letter grade function is waiting on a float, which is the student's average, which we just obtained in the previous line and put in the variable AVG. Okay? So do you see the pattern going on here? And then ultimately we have that pres list, and let me just look and see what he's accepting here. Okay, the function, it's the eligible function. It's going to accept 1 char argument, representing the student's letter grade, and it will return an int. Okay? So basically, we can say pres list. Oops. Again, we don't have the function in place, but this is what it's going to look like. Pres list equals eligible, and then passing it the letter. Okay. And the compiler doesn't like that eligible because I haven't declared it or defined it anywhere. But that's really how it's going to go. And you know what? Here's another thing. This one is going to be like a tally or an accumulation of the number of students eligible. So you're really, when you're accumulating something, you want to use your arithmetic assignment operator when it comes down to it. So that function call is probably going to look something like this, a line like this with the arithmetic assignment operator. Okay, so I'll let you define the rest of the functions and also try to do the loop thing if you're so inclined. And I mean, even with the big hints that I gave you here, it's still going to be an effort. So don't save this one till the end, because it is, like I said, it's our most challenging one. And once you get through this, I think you'll really find the rest of the semester much more reasonable as far as the challenge involved in the assignments. A lot more straightforward assignments. So anyway, I'll see you on the discussion board.